Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the next installment in our Data in Motion series, Building Trusted Data Pipelines. Our speakers today are Sue Pollock, one of our directors of product marketing at Precisely, as well as Brittany Schultz. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Sue and Brittany. Well, welcome everybody to this session talking about building trusted data pipelines. Today with me, I have Sue Pollock, one of our SMEs around data governance here at Precisely. And just to kick things off, I think it's important to talk about the latest 2026 State of Data Integrity and AI Readiness report that's come out from Precisely and Drexel LeBeau. In this report, it shows that while AI dominates data strategy, gaps exist within things like governance, quality, and trust, and those things are really threatening ROI. So today, what we're going to try and do is unpack how embedding governance directly into data pipelines can help close that gap and build AI-ready data with confidence. So I'm excited to chat with you today, Sue. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, no problem.
All right, so just kind of getting started with our questions here. It seems like data quality really does remain the first data integrity priority for companies going into 2026. And the LeBeau report points to data quality debt as something that's a growing risk. So from your perspective, how do you feel like embedding governance directly into integration pipelines can help prevent that debt from compounding over time?
Sure. Well, number one, thanks for having me. I do want to start out by saying, let's talk a little bit about data quality debt, right? What the report is really pointing to with data quality debt is that it's a cumulative structural problem. It's not a tool problem, right? So data quality issues compound because data now moves faster and farther than the governance process were ever meant to handle. Data is not just integrated and parked and then reviewed later. It's continuously flowing across pipelines, platforms, and environments. And every transformation is a chance for small issues to get copied and amplified and then carried downstream, right? So when governance sits outside of integration, those issues actually accumulate quietly, right? A schema mismatch here, a missing definition there. And by the time they're actually detected, they've already spread downstream across pipelines, dashboards, models, right? So that's how data quality debt builds. It's not one big crescendo failure, but it's lots of small unmanaged decisions that compound over time. So the key is here, embedding governance directly into your integration pipelines is going to change that dynamic. When you have quality checks, standards, and controls that are applied as the data is created and transformed, not after it's already consumed. That's the key, right? So what this is going to do is it's going to shift governance from more of a cleanup function to a preventative one. And this is even more important, right? Let's think about this with the rise of AI and now especially agentic AI, where decisions are being made autonomously, right? That data is even more importantly that you catch it on the front end, right? That you're being proactive. So for data engineers, this is really about predictability. When governance travels with the data, pipelines behave more consistently as they scale. Small inconsistencies, that data quality debt we were talking about, are contained early instead of becoming systemic problems. And that's how organizations keep data quality debt from compounding, by designing trust into the flow of data itself without adding friction to the delivery. That make sense?
Absolutely. And I think that the idea of having trust relevant and embedded within the data pipelines is so important. It's something that I think keeps coming up for people who are on this call watching. So let's talk a little bit more about the mechanics behind what that trust can actually look like. So things like metadata and data catalogs are often described as the foundation for governance, but I feel like often they're still very misunderstood. So how do you see metadata and cataloging enabling things like better visibility, lineage, and confidence in data as it moves through these data pipelines?
Yeah. So, first of all, I want to say trust. A lot of people, when they think about trust, they're like, oh, we have to get those policies in place. That's not really, policies are the means to the end, right? It really comes from visibility. And so having visibility around metadata, business-friendly glossaries, proactive data profiling metrics, catalogs, and lineage, that's what's going to make visibility possible at scale, right? When metadata is incomplete or disconnected, teams, they don't really know what the data means, where it came from, how it's changed, those transformations. That uncertainty slows decision-making, creates downtime, and creates risk, right? So ultimately, people hesitate to use the data, or worse, they use it where they shouldn't be using it, right? It's not really for the right purpose. When metadata and lineage are captured automatically as part of your data pipeline, they reflect reality. You're not just guessing, oh, I think this is the right one for me, right? Lineage shows how data has moved, how it's been transformed. Catalogs make that information discoverable and accessible. And together they give teams confidence that the data that they're using is understood and appropriate for their purpose. So let's go back to the first question. Things are moving fast, right? This is critical. You must allow your teams to change pipelines, onboard new use cases, and support your new AI and agentic AI initiatives without losing that control. And visibility is what turns data in motion into data that you can trust. So final, for teams that are maintaining and building pipelines, metadata catalogs, data profiling, and lineage are what makes systems operable at scale.
Yeah.
What you can do is you turn debugging from guesswork into more targeted analysis, and it's clear how changes ripple across pipelines and consumers, right? So when the context is captured automatically as data moves, engineers can troubleshoot faster, make changes with confidence, prevent that downtime. I always hate to use that bad word, and spend less time relying on tribal knowledge to solve the problems.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Well, I think it does. And I think that it's even more relevant because IT environments are just continuing to get more and more complex. So these hybrid and multi-cloud environments obviously add a lot of complexity to today's IT landscape and IT architectures. What do you think are the biggest governance challenges that organizations face with these types of architectures? And how can something like automation help them to maintain control without necessarily slowing down data teams?
Yeah. So let's talk about, governance really breaks down when it relies on manual processes in the environments that you're describing that are anything but manual, right?
Yeah.
Hybrid and multi-cloud architectures multiply the systems that you're working with, the tools, and the data paths, and that makes consistency, I don't want to say nearly impossible, but very difficult to maintain, right?
Yeah.
Without automation, policies get applied unevenly, access controls become less clear, lineage is very fragmented, right? Trying to see where things are going. Audits take forever, right? And teams end up slowing themselves down because they're unsure where the data is that's safe to use. So automation changes this by shifting data governance from approval-based processes to built-in guardrails. And that's what we're trying to accomplish, right? Policies are enforced automatically as the data moves. Lineage is captured continuously. Access controls and audit trails are created by default. So you're seeing a lot of things that don't take that manual effort anymore. We can now do that. Catalogs are created and asset descriptions are auto-generated. The more we can do that, the more we can make sure that this process becomes more cohesive across the organization. The result really is more speed, not less, right? Teams don't have to stop and ask permission or fix issues later. Governance is already there, right? It's quietly doing its job in the background. And as a matter of fact, I had a customer that once described this as stealth data governance, right? So it's happening in the background. People don't have to go out and do it.
Yeah.
Summing up what you're asking about in hybrid and multi-cloud environments, automation is going to be what keeps governance from becoming an engineering nightmare.
Yeah.
When policies, lineage, and access controls are enforced automatically, as the data moves proactively, engineers don't have to re-implement rules per platform or manage governance by hand, a nightmare for anyone. That creates reusability across teams and environments, can move forward without slowing down for approvals, exceptions, and manual checks. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it honestly sounds like less headaches, more innovation, which is where we always want to go.
Totally.
And I think that that's a good opportunity to wrap AI into this, right? You're talking about AI, you're talking about agentic AI. I think it's important to talk about how governance fits in there. So one of the strongest findings from that Livreau report that I mentioned earlier is that organizations expand existing data governance programs and include AI governance tend to outperform those that simply create AI governance efforts separately. So why do you feel like extending data governance into AI governance is something that's seen as more effective? And what role do you think governed data pipelines play in making AI trustworthy, again, at scale?
Yeah. All right. Well, first of all, let me start with this. AI governance sounds like this thing that's really different, right? And it's not
Yeah.
entirely new. In reality, it's built on the same foundations as data governance. It does have some nuances, of course, but quality, lineage, access, and compliance don't stop when you're monitoring your data model, right? Your AI model. They matter even more, so the emphasis needs to be on it, but it's not like this is this brand new thing that no one ever heard of. When organizations create separate AI governance programs, they often duplicate efforts, create new processes, they introduce new silos. the result is newer additional processes that maybe their company is not familiar with, or they don't necessarily trust because they don't understand them, right? So the key is extending existing data governance into AI governance, and that works because it leverages what's already in place.
Yeah.
Right? Governed data pipelines ensure that training and inference data is trusted before it reaches the model. So the sources are trusted, but then lineage supports explainability and policies ensure responsible use. One of the key capabilities for AI governance that is more accelerated or more important is having a robust workflow, because we need to monitor and track that human in the loop accountability. So you're doing all of the same things, but there is a hyper focus on making sure that the data is being monitored and watched by humans, and that's being tracked so that it's being used correctly and that it's still doing what it's supposed to be doing. The key insight that I'm going to ask you to take away from this is that you can't govern AI outcomes if you don't govern the data that feeds it. But you also need trustworthy AI, and that starts long before the model. It starts way up in the pipeline, which is what we're talking about today, right?
Yeah.
So for data engineers, extended data governance into AI governance is about reducing duplication, clarifying responsibility, and when data is governed upstream, those models inherit trusted inputs just by default, without new pipelines or parallel review processes or additional controls that you're bolting on afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And governance of your AI models can then, for the most part, allow you to use the same processes that your teams are familiar with so that you can do that faster in a more replicable fashion.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like music to data engineers' ears, I bet. And with that point, let's make it a little bit more practical. So, for teams that know that they should be embedding this governance into their pipelines, but maybe feel a little bit overwhelmed, what would you say are a few practical steps that they can take today to start building their pipelines that can scale with confidence?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say a story that's been around for a long time, and maybe you can relate to this or not. You've heard it before. How do you need an elephant story?
Yes, yes.
One bite at a time, right?
Ah,
So the biggest mistake teams make is that they think they have to do everything at once. You don't. A practical starting point is to focus on those high value, high risk data, especially data feeding analytics AI, and again, agentic AI, since that's autonomous, right? From there, teams can embed just a few core capabilities directly into their existing pipelines. Basic quality checks, metadata capture, that's a big one. Metadata capture, cataloging, lineage. Start small. The goal isn't perfection, okay? The goal is going to be really momentum. When governance is embedded incrementally, teams start seeing immediate benefits. Hey, these are being cataloged. This is being, and the metadata is being captured. I know what this means. And you're starting to get some positive momentum. So they start seeing fewer issues downstream, faster onboarding of new use cases, less time fixing problems, right? And that's the incentive you need. Over time, those small steps compound. And governance becomes how data is delivered, not an extra process, something else that we need to do on top. Again, it's that stealth data governance, right? For pipeline teams, once again, remember, it's not about perfection. It's about progress. And if you start with those high value, high risk pipelines and embed just a few core capabilities, that's going to get you started on the path of greater process optimization for yourself.
yeah. And I feel like that's going to be a great way to not only build confidence within the teams themselves, but with the downstream customers, whether that be an executive team or an actual customer outside of the organization. I think that's really important. So,
sure, you're going to be getting less as an engineer, you're going to be getting less inquiries from those people if they're getting better data. So
yep.
it's going to roll up for positive across the organization.
Yeah. Well, we got time for one more question. So let's close by looking forward now. So for the rest of 2026, right, what do you think is going to separate organizations that truly trust their data pipelines from those who are still struggling? And what role do you think something like governance by design is going to play in that difference?
Yeah. So governance by design is exactly what we're talking about. It's inherent in the process, right? And by 2026, actually what we heard in the survey, and it'll be clear, organizations that trust their data pipelines will have engineered that trust into the platforms and processes. We were just talking about this, small bits at a time. You're seeing trust along the way. Organizations that are more successful will embed governance into integration, automate quality and controls, maintain continuous visibility. Once again, it's that visibility through metadata and lineage. And as a result, they'll be able to scale analytics and AI with confidence. That's one of the things that people are struggling with. All these great AI projects, but they can't get to them because there is not enough trust in that data.
Yeah.
So organizations that struggle will still be reacting, right? They'll still be fixing the issues after the fact, retrofitting controls, defending outcomes instead of building that trust in as you go. So in summary, teams that truly trust their data pipelines will be the ones that engineered trust from the start. That's what we're seeing as far as the trend and where the more successful organizations are. Governance built into integration shows up as fewer surprises, less downtime, that four-letter word again, more predictable delivery, and the confidence to scale analytics and AI without constant intervention. And the real differentiator won't be who moves the fastest. It will be who built pipelines that can keep moving fast without breaking that trust.
Oh, that's a really great thing to, I think, share with the group. Is there anything else that you want to leave our viewers with, or just give them a little bit of a reminder of before we close out?
Final takeaway that I would say is that automating governance directly into your data integration pipelines is how teams move fast without breaking trust. And it's going to prevent that data quality debt that we started with before it compounds and creates continuous visibility as data changes and replaces manual controls within guardrails. And again, agentic AI, it's what everyone is talking about this, where systems act autonomously on data. This isn't just going to be best practice. It's going to be required. It's going to be imperative.
Yeah.
Right. So automating governance into your data integration pipelines is how you can get there. Bottom line, in the current environment of fast moving data, you cannot just govern outcomes after the fact. Trust has to be engineered upstream in the pipeline itself. So I hope that's what you heard today.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Sue. And it was wonderful having you on with me today. Really excited. Thanks so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to our speakers for diving deeper into building trusted data pipelines. If you're interested in seeing more conversations like this one, you can check out our next installment in this series, Scaling ETL Pipelines for the Cloud Era. If you would like to go deeper into the topic of data integration and data in motion, hop on over to precisely.com to see more demos, white papers, and case studies. There you can also check out the 2026 LeBeau report that was mentioned during the session. If you're interested in a conversation with some of our Precisely experts, you can go to precisely.com/contact to set up a personalized demo. Thank you again so much for joining this session, and have a great rest of your day.